Hi there. I'm gonna warn you right now, because I think that's only fair. I got a bit lost in the rambling of this one, and I liked that, so I left it in. But I decided to split this one up into two parts, because I didn't get to talking about Always Sunny and Arrested Development, the original topics for this video, for ages. So if you're just here for them, then congratulations, because you don't have to watch this video. You've graduated early to part 2, which will be releasing tomorrow. I mean, I do hope that you'll stick around for today's video, but I just thought I should warn you that it's going to be some completely and utterly unhinged rambling on two very different styles of comedy. Being a Brit, I'm weirdly high and mighty about American. I prefer the UK office to the US version. I prefer this to this. And to be completely honest, I prefer living in a world where the American remake of Misfits never quite got off the ground. It's just how we are, a bitter people. And yet there are some American comedy series that do scratch that itch, becoming massive hits on this side of the Atlantic through their ability to appeal to a completely different audience. And maybe this is because they share more British characteristics in their comedic stylings than other American shows, which has definitely been said about both of the series that I'll be discussing tomorrow, but also maybe that's just British people being snobbish and determining that every good comedy inherently lines up with our frankly depressing idea of what comedy should be.
Whereas the Brits, if someone gets hurt in a joke, it's hilarious, isn't it? You love watching people in pain. You ever watch a guy in his garden step on a rake? That's great. Is it? Fuck, that hurt. Shit. No, it didn't, but that proves my point. You thought it did, and you laughed, you sick bastards.
To find out more about these differences, I went on YouTube and searched American comedy versus British comedy, tell me the differences please, in an attempt to rediscover an old video that I vaguely remembered watching like 5 years ago. So instead, I'm going to go down a real rabbit hole here and try to define the differences myself. So for me, the differences between British comedy and American comedy are arguably exemplified by how each tends to end in a very different way, both on the grand scale and at the smaller episodic level. Look at the heartwarming ending of, for instance, Friends, by comparison to, I don't know, Blackadder, where all of the characters die.
That's the great thing about British TV. They give you closure.
British comedy characters don't group together to cheer one another up in their lowest moments, don't steal the limelight with their talents or their likeable qualities, and certainly don't end their episodes with resounding successes or moments of relief that bring everything back from the brink of catastrophe. When I think of great episodes of American-style comedies, I think of happy characters for whom a threat appears and who survive said threat through a late resurgence of character, or even just a moment of luck. It's a pattern that we see time and time again, where the story ends on a positive note to send you happily into the rest of the week. But British episodes say no to that formula. And to exemplify that fact, I'm going to talk to you today about Black Books. Black Books is one of my favourite sitcoms ever made, and I think it's a perfect example of the nature of the British comedy series. It revolves around three utterly miserable characters, Bernard, Manny and Fran, who do not function together at all, but are bound to one another by their complete inability to work or live or socialise anywhere else. Their misadventures generally revolve around being offered something nice, having a chance to escape, seeing their lives improving somewhat, and then having all that crash down as they collapse in on themselves, and end up in that same wretched filth in which they started the story. In one episode, Fran encourages the others to respond to loud construction works by spontaneously going on holiday. The three of them whittle down their options until they find the perfect destination, which is particularly impressive because the three of them are all interested in completely different things. As I said, they do not function together. They manage to snag some extra cheap flights, and after some serious packing debacles, they leave, only to find that the flights in question are so cheap because they require so many changeovers.
I don't care where it is, I'm not getting on another plane.
I think this is Miami.
Fine, I'm going to live here and sell guns to children.
You liked Saint-Honoré.
I did. I thoroughly enjoyed the 4 hours we spent there.
When they return, they find that a rival bookshop has opened up next door. That's what all of the construction was about. And that a customer was locked inside the shop for the 2 weeks that they were away, gradually going insane in that time. Bernard, fed up with absolutely everything, leaves for another holiday, putting Manny in charge of the shop for that time, which subsequently causes Manny to leave and work at the rival shop next door. Another time, the bookshop is robbed, so they get a new state-of-the-art security system which ends up with Bernard locked outside and Manny locked in. Manny gets obscenely drunk on the only fluid in the building, which is absinthe, and ends up acting according to the SAS survival handbook, cooking and eating Bernard's beloved collection of dead bees when he finds no other food source available, whilst Bernard himself gets ripped off at the cinema trying to see a film that is cancelled before just to stay in and away from the rain. Fran is unable to help either of them because she's listening to the shipping forecast. By the next morning, the shop has again been burgled, with the fiends this time taking the expensive security system itself. And in yet another episode, Bernard finds himself winning money on a bet, and it kicks into gear a gambling addiction that almost loses him his shop. This actually does end up with him being rescued by his friends, who fittingly pose as Americans, unaware of British customs or the culture and pitfalls of gambling that exist in this country. But even then, it ends with Bernard being chastised by them both, each unable to give or receive support in a healthy or selfless manner because they're so petty. And they get more from deriding their friends than they do from being friends with them in the first place. You've probably heard enough of this now, but I want to emphasise how commonly this pattern occurs, with the final punchline of each episode being the misery that these characters have caused themselves or someone else. And this pattern is so characteristic of British comedies that, for me, it's the difference that defines the two. But then, what of those comedies that I mentioned earlier? The American ones that pick up so much steam on this side of the Atlantic. The two that I'll be talking about tomorrow when I upload my next video are, in my opinion, the very best examples of those. So if you want to hear about them and what I think it might be, please do join me next time for part 2, in which I'll look at Arrested Development and It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and the two characters who each serve as the essence of an American comedy that Brits can get behind. Thanks for watching. I know that this one feels like a bit of a mess, but that's only because it absolutely is. I really do appreciate you hearing me out though, and if you have any thoughts on the topic or the video in general, then I'd love to hear them in the comments section below. If not, well, hopefully I'll see you tomorrow, and until then I'll just say, have a nice day.